We welcome Lance Leipold, Kansas Jayhawks head coach. The first coach since 1915 to lead the Jayhawks to a 4-0 start in 2 consecutive seasons. I know you've heard that stat once or twice this week, Coach, but does that blow your mind that pre-World War I the last time this happened?
Yeah, it does. I jokingly said if I obviously didn't do enough research, before I interviewed to really know a little bit what we were stepping into, but at the same time, all the more fulfilling. Under 2.5 years that we've been here to really kind of get this, get a foundation set, and we got a lot to do yet. But we made a lot of progress, and looking forward for the challenges ahead.
Well, and it does seem like you've been able to do this fairly quickly. And I was looking at, because we had Tavondre Sweat on a few weeks ago. He's one of the Texas defensive linemen. I thought, oh man, they're playing a really good defensive line against Texas this week. And I was thinking, I just watched you guys play against Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph from Illinois.
Yeah.
And looked real good against 2 NFL D tackles. And I watched them play against Penn State the next week, and your guys did better against them. So how did you do that with the big guys, especially? Because that seems like that's the hardest thing to get going.
Well, we had a good returning unit of offensive linemen with experience. Starting really at center, Mike Nowitzki's been with us now for 5 years. 2 at Buffalo as a starter, and now he's been a 3-year starter here, taking advantage of the COVID year. So he's our leader up front. Dominic Pooney's now playing left tackle, played left guard last year. He's a D2 transfer from Central Missouri, and boy, he's been as maybe was our best lineman last year. We lost Earl Boswick's on the practice squad for the Cowboys, but everyone else is back and some experience. And we've challenged our group that these are, going to be some physical defensive lines that we're going to play against, physical brand of play. And if we're going to be the team we want to be, that it starts with them, and they've answered that so far.
So you've got those guys have been around. Jalon Daniels has been in the offense for a while now. How much more can you do? Because I've heard your offensive coordinator, Andy, talk about, it's a pro-style offense with spread concepts, meaning there's a lot of eye candy, a lot of pre-snap moving around. How much better are you at that and more efficient at that?
I think we progress each and every week. But from where we were a year ago, I think almost night and day to an extent, because again, as you've been doing this a while as well, and the benefits of those bowl practices. Mm-hmm. And for this program to be in the drought like it was, to get those practices before the bowl game was so valuable. And then the value is the retention that you get when you go back on the field in spring. And we started late February, so we kept the retention. And now with I say modified, but really, to me, one of the best benefits of COVID is when they really kind of loosen some of the time you can spend with your players on the field in the summertime and continue to teach, and you can reference calls and do things. And I think our offense has been able to now, most of our receivers, the running backs, most of those guys are all back. So we've been able to keep building upon that. And like you say, eye candy, we can mess around with different things, shifts, motions, all these different things. And hopefully we find the ways to put some continued stress on the defense.
Yeah, Andy was talking about that a couple of weeks ago, and I found it interesting what he said. It feels like small wrinkles to your guys when you add them at practice, but it feels huge to the defense when they're trying to play against it.
I would agree 100%. And that's kind of, we even way back when, my last 2 years as head coach at Wisconsin Whitewater is when Andy joined us, and we were evolving in some ways. And of course, go to Buffalo and we start really square one, installing it, go through the tough 2 and 10 the second year, and then you kind of build with some younger players again. This one's been able, because of some of these things of player retention and that extra time, that's allowed us to keep doing that. But when whether it be at convention or the camp circuit, so to speak, or on the road recruiting, you run into some of your people that you're playing against, and they make reference to, how much they're upset at you because they got to spend all this extra time looking at it. And we've taken a small page from the Kansas City Chiefs of about, letting the players, mess around and give suggestions and give some, fun wrinkles that kind of makes it fun at practice. And you can do that when you got an experienced group and also that can execute. So it's really been working out.
Can your tight end just change the route like Kelsey can?
Well, not quite that yet. They would like to, though. But I'll tell you, and Andy would be the one that could answer a lot better. But, when we said this about, giving suggestions and bringing plays in, he also put the caveat on is that now, guys, it's got to fit into what we're doing and you got to explain it. And it was amazing. Some players that you wouldn't necessarily think would know the ins and outs of some stuff that really had some thought out reasons and why and what it would complement. And that's also gives them some ownership. Yeah. And I think that's also the next part of this. And especially with today's player, you give them a little bit more at stake in this, the buy-in's even better.
I want to tell you about Prize Picks. It's Thursday night, so it's time to go to that Prize Picks app. If you haven't downloaded already, download the Prize Picks app. Use the referral code Andy. It will get an instant first deposit match up to $100. You deposit $100, they'll match $100. You deposit $50, they'll match you $50. That's how it works. Use the referral code Andy, and then you get to play. And there's already a bunch of options out there. You open the QB passing yards, and you see the squares immediately. Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders. What's this going to look like? Is Caleb Williams going to go off in his? This will be the first game that the casual fan is watching a lot of Caleb Williams. That you've had to find him on the Pac-12 network, or you've had to watch him very late at night. That's not the case now. This will be noon Eastern kickoff against Colorado and Coach Prime. Will this game look like the Colorado-Oregon game? That's your question, because Shedeur Sanders, the square for his passing yardage, 307.5. If the game looks like the Oregon game, you're going to want to pick less than there. But I'm not sure the game's going to look like the Oregon game. If you watched USC Arizona State, well, they got gashed a few times. And the question is, can Shedeur Sanders deal with what should be a decent USC pass rush? If he can escape, stay on the move, complete some passes, there's a chance that some of his guys can break him. So do you go more than on that, or do you say, no, the talent discrepancy is too great? It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm just – now the question is, if you watch the Oregon-Colorado game, maybe you go to the Marshawn Lloyd square. So they got 92.5 rushing yards for Marshawn Lloyd. You would think if USC looked at what Oregon did and wants to just take control of this game right away, well, you'd think they're going to hand it to Marshawn Lloyd quite a bit. So another game in that same window where the running backs are going to be very important to both teams' success is that Florida-Kentucky game. Trevor Etienne was Florida's best player against Tennessee. He's probably the biggest reason they won that game. Ray Davis for Kentucky has shown that he has breakaway ability. He's made that offense a lot more explosive. Trevor Etienne, 66.5, more or less. Ray Davis, 79.5, more or less. Where do you fall on that? I tend to lean toward more for both of them. And then we'll see, because really how Florida's defensive front plays in that game will have a big effect on the outcome of that game. Do they shut down the run game like they did against Tennessee and force Devin Leary to make the throws? And you want a Devin Leary square? 229.5 passing yards. That's an interesting. And Graham Mertz from Florida, they got it 195.5. Both those offenses are going to be very deliberate. I don't think they're going to be chucking the ball all around the field. If you watch Florida play, Graham Mertz is not throwing deep. He's throwing short, and they're hoping that somebody can catch the ball and make something happen with it. But so many different options, so many games. You can go down to that Duke and Duke and Notre Dame game. How do you feel about the rushing yards for Audric Estime? How do you feel about the passing yards for Riley Leonard? And then Ole Miss LSU. We just talked about Harold Perkins. How might he affect the game? Jackson Dart for Ole Miss. His his rushing square, 40.5. So if he's got 40.5, that means he's not getting sacked very much. And that means he is moving the chains with his legs every once in a while. That, I think you go more than on that. If that hits, you might be looking at an Ole Miss win there. If you go less than on that, especially if that number veers toward the negative because Mr. Harold Perkins is in his face all the time and getting him down on the ground, then you're probably looking at an LSU win. Mentioned Audric Estime. He was on the show earlier this week. 90.5 rush yards, more or less. Now, there is not a square for Jeremiah Love. And I think that's the interesting one with Estime. I don't even know if it's necessarily the Duke defense. It's how much do they split the carries between Audric Estime and the young backs, including Jeremiah Love, who came on pretty strong there at the end of the Ohio State game. So, whole lot to play with. I will be on Friday afternoon making some of my picks. I did okay last week. It wasn't great. I got a 3 out of 5 when I did a flex pick with 5 different quarterbacks. I got 3 to hit. You know, I always do more than because I like to root for people, not against people. Although their Prize Picks is messing with me now. They have an interceptions category. So that's one where you would want to do a less than if you would like to root for the person and a more than if you would like to root against them. But so many different options available in a bunch of states. Referral code Andy. Go to Prize Picks. Download that app. You're going to have a lot of fun once you start going through those different squares because you're saying, ooh, now I want to watch this game. Now I want to watch this game. They will match your deposit up to $100 with your first deposit. Referral code is Andy. We'll see you Friday. I want to see what you're playing. You'll see what I'm playing. And then we'll have some fun watching it all happen on Saturday. Oh, and I'm imagining, like, if you're an offensive lineman, you're finding a way to double team somebody. You're finding a way to get a combo block. Yeah. No reach blocks for me. I'm setting this thing up for me. But it's interesting because it does make them, it incentivizes them to understand the scheme better.
It does. But the funny thing is, some of this was we used one against Illinois that is, then they're shifting themselves out to the top of the numbers or shifting back in and, some fun things that they see from time to time. So it also kind of breaks it up, like I said. But you're right. It does give them a little more piece of it and understanding about what we're doing all the time as well as coaches.
So I'm curious about how you handle this psychologically, because you've been in so many different places in your coaching career in terms of what's expected of your team, where you've been at Wisconsin Whitewater, where you're expected not just to win every game, but to win every game by 1,000,000 points. You've been, early at Buffalo, early at Kansas, where you're just rebuilding and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And now you're in a situation where you're supposed to be competitive in every game. Does the way you handle the players psychologically change because of that? Or is it the same approach?
I try to keep, I hope I keep it the same. If anything, I've tried to loosen up. I could look back in my first part of my head coaching career and and I still have it probably, where you're always worried about it, get whatever you've kind of grown to and established, that it's going to get away from you. And, I always say that it's my job to keep pushing, and demanding. And I said, guys, you just need to understand that of me. I said last week after the BYU game, I had to try to get myself in the right frame of mind that I didn't start talking too much about the challenge in Austin without letting these kids enjoy what a good win that was. And, but I did tell them during, maybe it was even, during our first year here, is that we're going to coach you the same way and the same expectations and demanding you to do things right and in a timely manner on and off the field, whether we're 2-10 or 10-2. And I said somewhere along the line that you're going to understand there's not going to be a win or loss that influences our day-to-day process of how we go through things. And we'll appreciate it. We're not going to look in the rearview mirror when we're struggling, and we're not going to sit there to pat ourselves on the back when we're successful.
So let's talk about this defense. You had 2 defensive scores against BYU. Mm-hmm. You're halfway to last year's interception total already. You gave up 9 yards rushing. If you back out sacks, it's still only 33 yards rushing. I mean, how much better has this group gotten?
Well, they've gotten significantly better, and it, part of it I could say for a lot of reasons, Andy, and it's I'll start with, yes, we've added some new pieces. The back seven is more experienced. They're all returning. They understand things better. But when I break it down, sometimes to keep it fair to everyone, so to speak, is we inherited a program that was a 3-man front. We transitioned to a 4-man front. As you probably well know through your time, is that this program was vastly under scholarshiped from about 3 coaches ago. Okay. Besides being under scholarship, we were 10 over scholarship on offense versus defense. Wow. So now, we had the recruiting if you really placed it, and I was hired the day before the spring game, and the quick sidebar is I go watch the spring game and they line up in 10 personnel, but yet on the scholarship, there's 5 tight ends scholarshiped and 2 fullbacks. So, so evolving everything back into a segmented by class, by position, by offense and defense has been a process that we've been working through. And then we've had to move players and probably play some guys out of position. But now through the portal and other things, we think we're in a little bit balanced situation. We've been able to add a few guys. We're playing a lot of guys up front that are keeping us fresh. And like I said, the back seven has had a little more experience. And with an addition of a guy or two there, at least in the 2 deep, I think we've been able to play at this level. Now we know it's a huge challenge, and it's really going to be probably measured of improvement down in Austin on Saturday.
I heard you mention in another interview that the last time you guys went to Austin 2 years ago, you had 3 of your DBs that are starting now were starting then, and not one of them weighed over 165 pounds.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, there were times where I think we had 4 literally true freshmen on the field in the secondary at certain times of the game, maybe in a nickel package. And it was men against boys in a lot of different spots. And some of these guys have grown. Some of those guys played well. 2 of those guys, OJ Burrows, who's playing a lot for us and starting, and he had an interception. Kobe Bryant had a pick 6 in that game 2 years ago. But at the same time, when we've been working through and nutrition and strength and everything that we wanted to try to do, that's kind of where it was starting at that time when we were the youngest Power 5 football team in the country in 21.
In terms of body types, because you mentioned switching from a 3-man to a 4-man front, and that there's so much that goes into that in terms of just the type of players you're recruiting. Do you feel like you look on the line of scrimmage on both sides the way you'd like to look?
We're getting there. Yes. I think we've added some length that we didn't have before. Like we moved like a linebacker, Kyron Johnson, ended up being a 6th-round pick for the Eagles.
Oh yeah. But I watched him put Trevor Penning on his butt at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. He was super twitchy, but undersized for that position, kind of that tweener type guy, but is probably more of a linebacker. But he helped us the first year. Lonnie Phelps, transferred from Miami of Ohio. We thought most of our portal guys too, Andy, we wanted them to be 2+ year guys. Lonnie declared for the draft. We're really hoping he'd return and we could keep adding to it. But I think we're starting to get some more of that 6'3+ guy on the outside, some more length, some arm length there, and then the thicker, wider body on the inside. So it's getting there. Linebacker as well. I kind of say, I jokingly said this our first year, we might have been 2-10 in the record. We were probably 0-12 in the eyeball test on the field in pregame, and that included University of South Dakota and FCS school. We just didn't have the look that we needed in length, speed, size, and everything.
So what you do have, though, is a quarterback that everybody, takes notice of and is scared of to defend. How much has Jalon grown over these past couple of years?
Oh, I think he's grown in so many different ways. If there's between media exposure and NIL opportunity, that alone is probably a hidden thing that people don't understand that helps young men grow up. not just how many dollars they get, because they have to go do things, puts them in front of they have to act in a professional manner, whether they're doing as a spokesman or meeting people. And that has really helped him. But he continues to grow and prosper as a leader and as a person through adversity. He hasn't stayed the healthiest, and he knows that. But his personality hasn't changed. He's got that smile and charisma that can light up a room, that gets other people excited when he's around. He's encouraged Jason Bean when he wasn't playing. He's been a great teammate, and through all the success, especially. I think sometimes in a program like ours that haven't had much, but there's a lot of people adding to it. But as you know, certain guys are going to be that focal point. He has stayed humble along the way, and that has been very refreshing.
How do you help him in terms of preservation? Because he's such a dynamic runner, but I imagine there are times you tell him, hey, you might want to just throw this one or get down.
We talk about those things, be smart with the ball. There's some of the times, even with some sacks, he's still trying to create. Sometimes we got to live for another day. We went out to the University of Nevada to play and, come away with a close win. Didn't play probably as clean. We didn't play as well as we would have liked. I'm not going to take any, because I think Coach Wilson, his staff, and their team played extremely hard, probably outplayed us. But we didn't put a lot of quarterback run in that game plan. And it was one of those things that we were going to take away some hits. Hopefully, obviously, there were some sacks and stuff, but we wanted to minimize that in that game to get ready for conference play. So we do try, but part of what we do is going to make everyone defend the whole field and defend all eligible players. And for us to try to be who we are, we're going to need something out of the quarterback in the run game.
Well, I imagine he will give you a little bit this weekend, but good luck in Austin, Coach, and appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.